Hello everyone, welcome to this week's 3D design activity brought to you by the Corona Public Library's Maker Exchange. My name is Mr. Martin, and today I'll be showing you how to create a smart floor plan using SketchUp, the online browser-based software. So without further ado, let's get right to it. Head on over to SketchUp.com and sign in, go to Products and hit SketchUp Free. Once you click Start Modeling, the software will load and we're ready to get started. You do notice I get this little error just because I'm in incognito mode, but we're going to create new, and instead of meters, we're going to use feet and inches this time, and we're going to get rid of this model here so that we start with a clean slate. Once that is out of the way, one thing I want to point out is this measurements tool down here on the bottom right. We're going to be making use of that. So we're going to change the camera to pan just to get us a better view of our work plane, and we're going to start with the rectangle tool. Now instead of making one line at a time, the rectangle tool is very useful for simply clicking and dragging. And you'll notice over there on the dimensions, once we have it selected, we can simply just type 40, 30 or 40 apostrophe, 30 apostrophe. That denotes 40 by 30 feet, and that creates our little base here that we're going to use as our foundation for our house. Now, of course, we can use the measuring tool here. Make sure that it did indeed create a rectangle that size, and here we have 30, 50 diagonal, and of course 40 feet for the front. So that is our base. Keep in mind we are working on the scale of a human here, so you will have to zoom in and pan the camera quite frequently in today's project. Now of course no foundation is ever exactly thin, so we're going to use the push-pull tool to give us a solid base to work with. Down there on the distance, you can see that it measures pretty accurately to up to 1/16 of an inch. But if we type in 1 foot, we have a nice good base to work with. So now that we've got the base, we can start planning what our house, or in this case floor plan, will look like. Where are we going to put the master bedroom? Do we want a driveway? Where's the front entrance going to be? How big do we want these things to be? So we have to think about this before we go and start creating our interior. The easiest thing to start with are the exterior walls, since this whole thing will be enclosed. So using the line tool here, not the rectangle tool, we're just going to start creating points. And of course, with the measurements, we can simply type 8 feet, not 89, 8 feet. And that creates a nice 8-foot line. I measured my walls in the apartment. They're about 8 feet tall, so we're going to go ahead and go with that. We can always add more on top if we need to. And so here I'm just going to go ahead and finish the lines. You could copy paste and simply snap the lines to the corners. But in case we want more control over what the overall design looks like, in case we're not building a perfect rectangle or a cube or polygon in this case, we're just going to do one at a time. So you'll notice it does snap most of the time. So that makes it easy to create walls. And you can simply go corner by corner and finish that up. One thing you might struggle with is getting it to line up perfectly or to snap to the right angle. Again, it does depend on what camera angle you're currently viewing it from. So you may need to simply just rotate it until it snaps to the right one, or simply choose a different corner to finish off that shape. As you finish up your shape, you'll notice that it will automatically fill in all of the exterior, so it will fill in the roof as well. And one thing you can do is just simply delete that with the select tool. If you try to move it using the move tool here, you'll notice that you can create some pretty wonky house designs. If you wanted to ever make a skyscraper, there you go. But for now, we're simply going to click and select the first face and just get rid of the ceiling for now. Now we can start planning our interior. So we have the exterior walls created. Now we have to think about, okay, how much space are we going to need? Where's the hallway going to be? How are we going to walk through? And so we're going to do that just by creating one line at a time. And we're going to do that on the floor first. Now you'll notice it'll snap to places like the midpoint, the corners, but we can also use the measuring tool. And there are several features of that measuring tool. You can use the instructor to read what each one does, but for now we're going to click on a corner. We're going to say this bedroom we want it to be about and we'll do 10 feet. So you can always type the length manually. We're going to do 10 feet here, and that's going to create a little dot, and that dot's going to guide the rest of our creation here. Now it doesn't really get any bigger, but if you hover your mouse over it, it will snap to it and call that a guide point, and you'll notice that it is indeed 10 feet. So what we can do now is simply click on the line tool, bring it on over, and we'll say approximately 20 feet. So we do want to make sure it is lined up properly. We don't want any crooked walls here. Again, use the pan tool if necessary. That's just going to get us a better overview of what this wall is going to look like. So without clicking anything, you can simply type in 20 feet and it'll make it 20 feet long. And then of course just finish off the shape. So you have one room, whatever you want it to be, already planned out on your foundation here. So now is where you start thinking, okay, if that's a bedroom, then do we want this to be a kitchen? Do we want that to be a patio? Where's our living room going to be? Obviously, we want the living room kind of near the front entrance, just because it makes sense. But we're going to make our master bedroom here on the left, and we're going to make the top right something else. We don't have to decide just what it is now, but we are going to start filling in the rest of the foundation. So let's go ahead and just finish up the floor plan by creating quadrants here based on that one room that we designed with specific measurements. We don't have the time really to go through and measure every single one. So for the sake of simplicity and for this example, we're just going to divide it like so. So now we've got, possible dining room, kitchen, master bedroom, etc. Obviously you want a living room somewhere in here. So before we start creating the walls, notice this is just going to help us for the planning. These lines aren't necessarily set. So the first thing we want to do is, figure out how people are going to get around. And to do that, we first design the entryway, which will lead into a hallway to get into the rest of our house. So from any point here on this wall, we're just going to create a 100 square foot entryway, which should give us ample room to work with. So we're going to make sure we have a perpendicular line and use the measurement tool to create a 10-foot line and make a square here on the floor plan. So that's our entryway. We can simply select this line in the middle and delete it to get a better visualization of what the entryway will actually look like. And at this point now, we can start thinking about where the walls are going to be. So we have our living room shape kind of set up here. We have our master bedroom potentially over here on the left. And now is where we can start filling in these other designs. So with the entryway here, we're going to start with a hallway that leads right into the rest of the house. I'm actually really liking the shape here on the left for a potential master bedroom. So I'm going to start finishing that up first, which will give me a better idea of what the rest of the floor plan will look like. Now here, it didn't perfectly snap, and it actually created a wall, or a potential wall, higher than 8 feet. And you'll notice it was a bit of trouble to get it to snap back into place. You can try the move tool, you can try the scale tool, but you'll notice that the easiest way for sure is to just delete the line, change the camera angle, and try to get it to snap to with the new line. And once again, easiest way to do that is to just type in 8 feet to create an 8-foot line. And now you're free to finish off the rest of the wall. Make sure you attach it to the base, and there you go. You've got one wall created. This little space here is perfect for a doorway, so I'm just going to go ahead and finish that one up first as well. Make sure it's the right height, and I can go across, or I can go to this point here in the middle. We're going to do this corner first. And we're just going to make sure that we finish up the walls for that one room. One thing you might notice is when you finish off this top portion, it will automatically fill in the ceiling. We're going to get to that in a bit, so we're going to undo that for now, and then simply go and try and finish off the rest of the walls. And you'll notice, depending on your camera angle, again, for example here, the line did not go exactly as planned. So simply undo and try again. If you keep running into issues where it's filling in the wrong, the wrong side or the wrong shape, simply try recreating the lines across the outside, and then go from there. Turns out I actually didn't need or want to fill that in just yet. So we're going to skip that part and focus again on the entryway. So over here we have one room, that's the master bedroom. So we're going to put the living room right here next to it, opposite. And now is where we start thinking about our doorway. Oops, we just noticed that one of our walls seems to be sticking out. We'll fix that in a little bit. But for now, let's focus on creating a hallway here. So we made a doorway that's about 4 feet wide here, and we have 10 feet total. So a hallway, we don't want it to be too thin or too wide. So all I'm going to do is from one end to the middle, measure about 1 foot. And so now we should have plenty of space to work with in the middle and divide out the rest of our house. So using the line tool, from that point we just created, go all the way to the other wall, and we now have our one hallway that leads straight through the house. Remember that these lines down here on the foundation are mostly there to just guide us, so we can select that one line. Now that we have it kind of divided up, we're just going to get rid of that one line, and we have a better idea of how much total space our living room is going to take. And now I'm just going to go through and use the line tool to finish off the rest of the walls. You'll notice I tried my best to get everything to snap perfectly. Remember that if you do have issues with it auto-filling certain spaces that you didn't want filled, for example, here in this other room, when I finish off the walls, it doesn't quite finish off the wall that I wanted. And so when I go to finish off the correct wall, it'll actually fill in the ceiling as well as that wall. And if that does happen to you, remember that you can always select a surface or a face and get rid of just the face while still leaving the outline, or getting rid of the outline completely. So here, once I created that shape, I'm just going to select the top and get rid of that, and we're good to go. And now we've got our interior pretty much divided. We have a master bedroom here, living room, possible kitchen or bathroom, and either an extra bathroom, an extra bedroom, or some patio space over here on the right. So now that we have the interior pretty much designed, it's time to work on the exterior and figure out what that's going to look like. And so first, it's time to talk about that one extra wall that we had kind of poking out. So you notice if I try and move it, it kind of just moves everything with it. If I use the scale tool, even more problems end up happening. Oops, wrong click. So here I'm going to go to the scale tool, try and scale it differently. You'll notice since there's other geometry attached to it now, it kind of freaks out. So all we're going to do is select, or use the select tool here. We're going to create a line that goes from the ceiling to the base. And we've essentially just blocked off that extra shape. And by selecting it and hitting delete, we can delete that face and then eventually delete the rest of the lines. Now we'll talk about deleting these lines later. For now, we're going to use them because they're going to help us guide what our entry is going to look like from the outside. So notice if I try and delete that, uh, without that line, it doesn't realize that there's a complete shape there. So it's going to delete the geometry that's within that space. So for now, we're going to leave it be, and we're going to focus on the doorway, or the exterior really. So once again, remember that thing I said about the ceiling where you can finish this off, but kind of just fills in the rest. We're going to be using that here. One thing to understand is that you could select faces, for example, as I thought I did here in the back. Simply select that and delete it. One thing to note, it does keep the outline of that face. So unless you select the lines themselves, it will, or they will stay in place. And we're going to use that to clean up the exterior once we're done. So for now, we're just going to get started on some windows and make it look nice and pretty. I'm going to select an arbitrary point here. Again, this is just for an example. We can do exact measurements in a later video. And so I'm going to get started on a window pane. And I'm no window expert here, but I'm going to say that these windows are about 3 feet tall. I do realize they are kind of low on this wall, but we can always fix that later. So here we'll make them about yay wide. That's exactly 10 feet. Which is actually quite a long window now that I think about it. But at any rate, let's go ahead and finish this up. It's just for looks here and for practice. Now, one cool thing here, we could simply select all of these lines and copy it over to a different wall. Or if we use, for example, the scale tool here, it'll recognize it as kind of a volume in space. So you can do some pretty fancy things here with just a simple combination of geometry. If you even wanted to kind of design some cool looking windows, you can always just simply select each individual face. But for now, we're just going to get started on our doorway here to the right. So before we begin on the doorway, this is a fairly important component of our house. Obviously, it's how you get in and out. So before we just go wild with creating lines, let's actually use the measuring tool here. And you'll notice we kept these lines on the exterior here to help us guide what our doorway would be. And so now is the time to kind of set this apart. So we've created one guiding point here. We're going to go ahead and make a, I would say 6 feet. Nah, let's do 7 feet. So our doorway is going to be 7 feet tall here. And we'll make it about, I would say 4 feet wide. Yeah, 3 feet is way too small. Let's go ahead and make that 4 feet. So let's go ahead and get rid of this. It's kind of hard to click a single line. You can always zoom in and click if that makes it easier. So let's go ahead and just finish off that 4-foot line. And again, if you're wondering, or if you forgot how to make exact measurements, simply before you click to finish, down on the bottom right, you can just type 4 foot or 4 apostrophe, and it'll recognize it as a measurement. So that's our imaginary doorway here. And here's where we'll start to kind of plan the rest of the inside. While we're on the subject of doors, we can always finish off the doorway here to either this bedroom, the patio, whatever it is that we're going to put here. Let's go ahead and design a doorway. Same as before, we have a 10-foot wall here, or a 10-foot space. So we're going to measure about, 2 feet on each side. I think that sounds about right. And do the same thing on the other side. That creates those guiding points that we can then snap our doorway onto. And it looks, let's go to measure. Why does that look so weird? 4 feet. And how wide did I make this? Looks like it might be a little too wide. So 7 feet tall. Do it across. And over. And yeah, that looks like a very wide door that we've created here. Okay, so that is 4 feet. And this one is 6 feet. Ah, Mr. Martin can't do math. So we're just going to undo that. And instead of 2 feet on each side, I'm just going to say, going from the point we've already created, we're just going to make a 4-foot line. and we can then just finish off that shape. So we're going to ignore that other dot we've made. But there we go. There's that extra other doorway. Finally, it is time to talk about the ceiling. And you'll notice still, as before, if we try and finish off the shape, completing it essentially fills in the entire volume here, which we don't want. So let's talk about how to get rid of that. What we can do is simply finish it off, and because we do eventually want the ceiling here, simply selecting it and hitting hide will let us simply hide it from view. Now it still does exist, and the rest of the geometry that we're working with is going to know that it's there. But for now, just for visual purposes, it is gone. And so here, just cleaning this up, that's a little bit of a narrow doorway that we've made. But if we try and adjust it, as you'll see here, using the push-pull tool, or the move tool, sorry, it does drag along the rest of the geometry with it. But when I do that, you'll notice that we've created then some other discrepancies in other areas. Now we've got a hallway that's too narrow, going from the living room to that back area. So we're just going to leave it be for now. We're just going to have it be a narrow doorway. And if you don't believe me, I might as well just show you what that looks like. So using the measurement tool, we had a 10 feet line here, right? So instead of whatever distance we measured there before, let's go ahead and measure then some extra room here for us, or for ourselves. Then we're going to use the move tool to move it over. So we've created enough space for a 4-foot doorway, or a 3-foot doorway, sorry. But you'll notice that, again, this space in the back is way too thin. So we'll just revert that, and we'll say that that's going to be just a narrow door here. We're just going to have to live with that. Now is the point where you might want to talk about designing some furniture, or start placing items around your possible house here. So you've got your living room, you've got your either kitchen or bathroom in the back here, you've got your master bedroom, you've got some extra space here, living room, master bedroom, etc. And you know what, let's go ahead and simply add some extra light to our place. So selecting it, hitting Control C and then Control V on the keyboard, or Command C and V for those on Mac, you can simply copy that over. And since it's just that one flat geometric shape selected, you can simply move it without affecting the rest of the geometry on the wall. And we can simply kind of put it into place. Now you could use the measuring tool, or just create a line to snap it to it and make sure it's even again, but I'm just going to show you here quickly what's possible. One thing to note is that our walls here have no depth, but walls in real life do. So we can use the push-pull tool to simply create some depth to our walls. And when you do create a project, you will eventually want to do that, just because it will matter. So here you can see it's created kind of a separate space now, apart from the original, and that lets us just use a line to snap the rest of it too. So now we have actual walls. So of course, to fill in the other side, we'd want to do that across every wall. So simply use the push-pull tool and fill in the rest of the walls. You notice here once again, due to the camera angle, I did have trouble actually having it create those extra lines, or actually completing the geometry. So don't be afraid to use the pan tool when necessary. That's down here on the bottom. So finally, making that line on that one wall creates the rest. So now you have actual walls. You can even start using the line tool to plan things like electrical outlets, things like that. But we're just going to finish up with some other basic thoughts here. Again, this is just a tutorial to get the general idea of a floor plan down. Let's say you wanted to kind of add things to the outside. You wanted to model a tree, or maybe even a patio. So again, you could always just add to this. If you wanted a porch, you would have to extend it from the foundation possibly, or a patio from the roof. So here, even though we don't have a roof complete, we can still create a little patio. And that's just using the line tool and the push-pull tool. So very simply, boom, there we go. You can do exact measurements if you'd like. You could add columns, you could add a window, kind of a what do they call it, a skylight to that patio if you really wanted to, although that kind of defeats the purpose. You could tell I don't build houses here. But there you go. So you have a nice little house to work with. It's fully customizable because you just created it yourself. So what I would do is now play around with other things that you might want to add. As always, we hope you enjoyed this video and we hope to see you on the next one. Follow us for lots more Maker Exchange content. We hope to see you soon.